Hi guys, this is a video I'm just making, well, one of three videos I'm making to go over something called transfer maps in Maya. And what this is for is for taking either high poly information and baking it onto a much lower surface, or taking information where we've got holes and lots of very dense geometry and then baking that onto a single plane, or taking a lit scene like this and then baking all this information down onto textures, so that one, we're not having to rely on very fancy lighting conditions all the time, which might not be able to be achieved inside a game engine or in Sketchfab, and two, it's also going to take down the amount of processing power we're going to need when we are in game engine. So I'm going to start off over here. So like I said, this is transferring all this high poly information. You can see here we've got bricks that are cascading down, sort of like a brick wall pattern, and then there's even some very basic but some sort of like chips and nicks inside the actual brickwork, just to give it a little bit of very basic information. And I'm going to bake that down onto this surface, so that this one surface, which is 20 faces, and this surface, which is 9,006 faces, this will have the impression of all this information, thus allowing us to take it into a game engine and have the impression of high poly information inside a game. And it's also good for making normal maps easier. If we know how to model it inside Maya, we can use Maya to bake a normal map, and then we can take that normal map and then start using it all over the place. Even on different assets, you can almost make like normal map palettes doing this. I've done that before. It's quite easy and it's quite fun. So I'm going to start off with this, and you can see here I've got this cylinder with lots of bricks, and I've got this very basic cylinder. I've just applied a standard blin to this material as well, just so I've got that specularity on there, and that's going to help me kind of pick out a lot of this information when the baking process is actually done. So first thing I want to do is, when I've got my low poly version and my high poly version done, and they need to be roughly the same, well, they need to be pretty much the same size, the same height, and the same width. I'm going to bring this and I'm going to set this over the top, so it's perfectly over the top like this, which it is. Which is good. So with that perfectly over the top of my object now, I'm going to go up to where it says not modeling, normally underneath File, Edit, Create, where it says Modeling. I'm going to drop that down, go to Rendering. And then this is all our rendering options we can do. And because this is baking, this is something to do with the rendering. So I'm going to go up to Light and Shading, and then down to Transfer Maps, which is underneath baking. So Transfer Maps, and it's going to bring up this menu here. Now this menu, it's going to ask for a target mesh, which is the very top option. That's where we put our low poly version of whatever we're baking. So that's where we're going to be baking all this information down onto. The source mesh is the high poly object, so that's what we're going to be pulling all the information from. And then underneath there we've got what it wants us to actually, what we want to actually take out. So we can actually take out normal, which is what we're going to do, a displacement, which gives the impression of raised surfaces. It's kind of like a more advanced normal map. The diffuse, which is just going to take the straight up color off a surface. The shaded, which is going to take the shade and the light and how shadows are reacting with the surface. And the alpha, so if we've got any holes in our object, like over here, oh yeah, there we go. So over here, we can use the alpha to actually take out all that information, which is very good. So I'll just remove this map and show us how we do things. So first things first, target mesh. I want to select my low poly mesh here. I'm going to click Add Selected, and then you're going to see there we've got Polycylinder Shape 1, and then Source Mesh. I'm going to select our high poly version. So there we go, we've got P-Cylinder 8 shape, and then I want to take the normal map out of there. So I'm going to click Normal Map, and then it's going to ask for a destination here. So I'm going to go put that into a destination. I've already kind of got a destination set up, Comp Stack. I'm actually going to make a new folder inside here as well, so this is going to be norm bake. Open that, and then inside here, I've got some, I don't know what this is. Inside here, it's asking me for a file type here. So at the minute it's alias pics. I don't want that. I want that to be a JPEG or a tagger, but I'm just going to click a JPEG because it's nice and simple. And then I'm going to name it cylinder norm bake. Click save that, and then it's going to tell us that inside the comp stack, new folder, cylinder bake is going to be inside there. File format's going to be JPEG. Included material, yes, because we want to bake down onto that that blend material. Map space, keep that as tangent space. Connection, you can just connect output, you can forget that one. Maya common output, this is what I want to change. So the map width and map height is just basically the pixel size. I don't want this to be 24, it's going to take a long time to render, so I'm going to take 1024. Transfer from world space is what we want. And sample quality, I'm going to put the medium, again, just because of the time. If I was going to do this for production, I'll do this at 2048 at high. I'd set it to bake and close, and then I would just leave it alone. I'd just walk away from the computer and go do something else. So with all that set up, I'm ready to go. Before I do anything, though, what I do want to kind of like clarify is I've got this more or less sat on top of my object, because what's going to happen in a very basic technical way, what's going to happen is the low poly version is more or less going to shrink wrap around the high poly, and then it's going to take all that information and bake it down onto a texture, and it's something called a cage, or it's something called caging, where this low poly is acting like a cage. So we want this cage to be pretty much either in the middle of or just above our high poly version, so it can shrink wrap down. If you had it too big, then this cage would be too far away for the high poly to actually draw, or for the low poly to draw any information off. So I'm going to make sure this is nice and close, and I should get a pretty good bake. I might get a couple of errors, maybe, but we'll see what happens. So when I'm happy with all that, I've got my target mesh, I've got my source mesh, I've got what sort of map I want to actually take out, I've got the file format, I've got the height, I've got the sampling quality. I'm going to click bake and close, and then I'm just going to stop this running while I do this as well. So I'm going to click bake and close, and then I'm going to come back and I'll show you what happens. This will take a while. This is what happens. So back inside Maya after that, if we look in our destination where we were actually putting our images, there we go. And there we go. We've been given and we've produced this map. This is a normal map. So I would have gone over what a normal map is, how it works in class, or if I've not, I will be doing. But this is a normal map. So each one of these colors is basically dictating to the camera and the light how it will react to highlight and to shadows, and it's really, really cool and useful. Cool. So we currently can't see it inside the engine, inside the viewport. But if we turn on our texture, you can now see that this is pulling all that height information. If we just change it back, it's overwritten back to a lambda for some reason, but if we change it back to a blin, then we get a very nice specular surface like that. It gives us a great impression of height and of depth and detail that, we go from a 20-sided cylinder and pull all that information from a 9006, and that's a very, very basic approach. You can do that on floor tiles, on wall tiles, on pillars like this. You can do this on bits of machinery. You can do this on anything you can think of which has got any sort of height information. You can do this sort of thing on, as long as you can make a high poly version in Maya. And like I said, it doesn't have to be that high poly. I mean, this is dense, but it's not that high poly, It's got enough information for me to pull all that information off, which is very, very useful. Super, super cool. So that's baking the height map off a surface. And I think this video's not gone on that long. No, it's only 10 minutes. So I'll move on to do the alpha map in the same video then. So if we come over here, we've got pretty much the same setup. We've got a high poly version of something. In this case, it's kind of like a, maybe it's the front of a speaker, which has got a very kind of like aerated mesh, or maybe this is a factory flooring on like a raised platform, so you need to have these holes in there on this staggered grid. You can see there that they're all staggered with each other. But obviously taking this is incredibly dense. This is 18,000, this is 19,000 faces just in this one little square. And if we were duplicating this off, you know, 100 times, that's an incredible amount of information. Or we've got a one poly face like this. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to bring this low poly version, and I'm just going to make sure it's over the top of this version here. So you can kind of see there I've got my high poly and my low poly mixing together. Okay, and let's go to rendering again, transfer maps, lighting and shading, transfer maps. I'm just going to reset everything again because nothing is how I want it to be at the minute, because obviously all the information was related to this. So now I'm going to do this. So let's get my source mesh, my target mesh, sorry, my single plane polygon. Okay, so I've added that inside my target mesh. Let's get my high poly. I'm going to bring that from my source mesh, like that. Oh, so clear all like that. There we go. So I had the old map in there for some reason. And now I'm going to choose to do a normal map and an opacity map. So I want to take all this really nice curvature information here as these little insets kind of like curve in. Then I also want to take the fact that there is no geometry in the middle and take that as an alpha map. So change my normal map, do the same thing. So I'm going to use the same destination as I did before, my normal bake. I'm going to change this to a JPEG and set this to be called walkway normal bake. There you go, it says JPEG. And then on my alpha map, I'm use a JPEG again because this is just going to give me a black and white map now. This is the walkway alpha bake. You can call them whatever you want. Okay, so let's give myself some nice information. Oh, no, right. Let's give my sampling quality to a medium again. Make sure that I've got, yes, my low poly's there, my high poly's there. Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to change that to a signed shader because I don't want this. Actually, I'll just change this to be a blend as well. There you go. So we've got a little bit of specularity there, but it should stick with it. Cool. It don't really matter to do that. That's just something that I wanted to do. So I'm going to click bake and close again. So I'm going to pause the video, click bake and close, and then I'm going to show you the output when it happens. So our bake is completed, and now we've got this. I'll just move our high poly away, and then this is what we're left with. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So you see there, it is still one plane, but we've given the impression that there is actually transparency in there. If we come to our images that we got kicked out from, we've got our alpha map, so anything that's white is opaque and anything that's black is transparent. And we've got our height map as well, or our normal map, so that's showing us that there is some curvature into this area here. Now the only thing I ever have issues with this is because I'm using a specular channel or a specular material on this, you can see here that we're actually getting some specularity inside of these recesses. What should be an empty hole is actually being filled with information. But there is a quick trick to do. I basically take my opacity map and I put that inside the specular map. So if I go to my material, so you can see here we've got a transparency plugged into that, and we've got a bump map plugged into there. If I go down to my specularity color, I'm going to navigate to where those maps are, and I'm going to find my black and white alpha map, put it in. You can see there that it actually then takes away that specularity on the inside, which is great. Now, obviously, there is a massive disconnect between, once we have these two things side by side, you can see the issues, or you can see the differences between this 2D plane, or this single plane, single polygon, and the actual 3D version. There's a lot more fidelity on this 3D version. But if you have a scene where you have many of these going on and on and on and on, then that sort of information is then lost. There's so much information there that your brain forgets to dissect it so much, and it just starts to believe what it's looking at. See here, we do have a little bit of an issue. Oh, that's because of something I did. Never mind that. That's something I did there. But if I didn't I overly smooth this. That's all. I made that a little bit too smooth on the corner, so we're getting this issue here. But that wouldn't have happened normally. Okay. So that's the power of transfer maps, and I would really implore you just to try it out and give it a go, because these are two very, very basic ways of using it. We'll just use it to make a very simple brick wall, and then we use it to make a very simple mesh flooring. But you can use this to make chain link fences, very, very ornate tiled surfaces. If you are familiar with ZBrush, then you can make something like Rococo detail on old Victorian furniture, or you could make a character and then sculpt in a lot of facial detail, or a lot of muscular detail, a lot of costume detail, and then bake all that high poly information down to a low poly version. You can even take all this information and then use it for graphic design and use it for anything really. This is such a powerful method of gathering information. And then you can take this into Sketchfab, you can start lighting it. These are perfectly usable for games, Sketchfab, for anything you want to use them for. Okay. And I'll keep it all one video. The next one I'm going to show you now is this one. So this one is a little bit more involved. We're basically going to take this scene here that's got a very basic render to it. I've just put a one light and a camera. There we go. One light and a camera on these two objects inside a room with some cold surfaces and some reflective surfaces. And I want to take this information out of this scene, but as a texture. So I can take it into something like Sketchfab, and then basically give the impression that this was a actual properly lit scene. So I'm just going to do a little bit of something before I carry on. So what I've done ahead of time is just created this scene, which the colours don't mean anything as well. I've just put 3 different Lambert materials in this scene, and the different colours are just to show you that there's different colours inside the scene. There's different materials inside there. I'm gonna be baking out 3 different textures for each one of these surfaces to then put onto here. Okay, so like I said, we've got this nice little simple render, and I can adjust this. I can up the lighting. I can change whatever I want. But what I really just want to look for is just how the scene looks at first. So this is looking fine to me. So with that, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, say, the cube first. Let's go to cube, and I'm actually going to name the cube tester 1. Names again. Tester 1. There you go. So I just named that, and then I'm going to go up here to Arnold. So somewhere we've probably not been before, and I'm going to come down to Utilities, and then Render Selection to Texture. Now the reason I'm using this in place of the other transfer maps is because I want to get this quality render, and we don't always get the same quality render from the transfer maps when we're doing this sort of light baking information. So I'm using the Arnold renderer so that I can get a nice, strong, high fidelity render. Excuse me about that. Arnold was just being a bit funny then. So I'm selecting an object first because I've got to do each one of these separately. In fact, I can do all three at the same time. I'm going to go up to Arnold, Utilities, Render Selection to Texture. My output folder I'm going to put back into that stack folder I had before. Comp stack, normal bake. I'll make a new folder inside here and I'll call it not A. Arnold Baking. Put it inside there, select that. So it's going to be going into my normal bake Arnold Baking folder. My resolution is my texture size, so I'm going to put that up to 1024. My camera, so we've not got as many options here, but because a lot of this information is going to be rendered through the camera. So whatever we see in our Arnold renderer is what's going to be happening on here. But the resolution is the final texture size, and the camera sample AA is just the quality. So I'm just going to put that up to, I'm going to leave that at 3 in fact, just because I don't want this to take a long time to render, and it will take a long time to render. So when I've done that, I've got my destination, I've got the size of my textures, and I've got my camera sample quality. I'm going to go in and click render. So now this is going to take a while. So again, I'm going to click render, pause the video, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to actually then take that information and bring it into our little scene here. So these should look, this should look like the identical render of this. Okay, cool. So now that that's done, it took a little bit of a while. I actually went through and changed my settings to be of a high quality, because the renders that came out are actually looking a little bit rubbish. So I just changed to a higher resolution, and changed my camera AA to 5, just so it's nice and smooth. It wasn't too grainy. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to Photoshop as the textures came in. So inside our actual Arnold Bake destination, we didn't get given JPEGs, we didn't get given PNGs or anything like that. We got given an EXR file, which is still a visual file, still something we can open up in Photoshop, but it gives us this. So it's our standard UV layout, and then it's basically baked on all the reflections and the color and the light and the shadow for this sphere, which is very cool, because you can see the cube next to it has been placed on. You can see the environment around. You can see all the different color cubes, and then you can see the area light at the very beginning, plus the reflections on the surface. We go to here. This is just a very quick UV unwrap of the actual environment itself. We can see here that we've got some nice shadows and reflections where the cube and the sphere sit, plus how the shadow and reflections working on the color squares. And then we've got the cube, which is much more of a basic shape, much darker, but because there's less fall off, there's less transitional surfaces for the light and the shadow to kind of roll against. But we can see here we've got some nice blue, some nice red, and some nice green, plus some shadows on there, plus the highlights on there. It's looking really, really nice. Okay, so back in Maya here, as you can see, we've got our scene set up, ready to go. So as I said, for each one of these different colors doesn't mean anything. It's just showing me that I've got a different material on each one of the surfaces. Now, before I actually apply our textures, there's something we have to change. An EXR file is a very, very big file in file size, and it actually carries a 32-bit color channel, which isn't something we can have in a JPEG or a TIFF or anything that we can actually use. So if I go to image mode, you can see here that we're a 32-bit channel. RBG is fine, but 32-bit is not fine. We can't actually save out a JPEG by doing this as well. So I'm going to change this to a 16-bit. I'm going to say don't merge. I'm going to say don't merge. And I'm going to put, because this has got I brought this in as a transparent background, so I'm going to put a black behind this. Just put a straight up black there, and then save that out as a JPEG. Inside my Arnold rendering file is fine. Oop, like that. So I'm going to call this Enviro. Okay. So bring my sphere. I really like the way this came out. This is looking really, really cool. So then I'll change this to a 16-bit. Don't merge. Okay, black layer below that one. Or in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a blue layer underneath it and a black layer down here. So I'm going to change. This is allowing me just to hide any mistakes or any sort of like horrible transitions that might happen. You might have this star shape at the very top or something like that. So I'm just trying to eliminate any sort of issues. Like this, what might happen if it was just black at the very top here, where it's kind of like a murky blue. We might get sort of like these black lines at the very top, and at the bottom, if we were to have it just straight blue, we might get the blue lines at the bottom. So what I'm doing is around this blacker area, I'm going to just make it pretty much black, and around this blue area, I'm going to make it pretty much blue. Hopefully that will hide any issues that might crop up. So then I'm going to save that out as a JPEG again. Call that sphere. Yes, and then get my cube, and this one I'm going to grab a straight up purple. Oh, make sure I can change my image type. 32 to 16. Don't merge. Let's do a little bit of fixing. This isn't needed too much. To be honest, I probably don't need to do this at all, but you know, just trying to take off as many, trying to hide as many issues as possible is always good form, just in case anything does go wrong. Right, I'm going to leave it as that. You could have just taken it with a black background and it probably would have been fine. The higher the resolution, the better the quality is going to be. So now I'm going to bring this in as a cube, like that. Yes, that's fine. So back into Maya now. So I've got my Lambert on my cube, and I'm just going to navigate to my Arnold baking. There we go. So I've got my cube. Put that on. You can see there we've got a little bit of issues going on with the texture there. Again, the better the render quality, the better the output was going to be. So then my sphere, do the same thing. As soon as I bring my sphere in, okay, and then I'm going to bring my enviro in, like that. So you get a good idea about what's going on. So you can see here we've got a little bit of the reflection of the sphere on the ground. Same with the cube. We've got a little bit of the reflection of the cube on the ground. We've got obviously the wall on the side here is being picked up. Same with at the back. We've got like the cube reflecting on the sphere. The blue wall reflecting on the cube. We've got some blue cascading and some red cascade and some green cascade on the actual walls itself. We've got a nice little bit of a shadowing back here. Plus, if we lift up these two objects, our spheres, you know, we've had our nice little ambient shadows on the bottom as well, so it's giving us a nice little planet. And there's no texture and there's no lighting information in there at all. Absolutely no lighting information. In fact, so I've gone in and actually plugged these into the ambient color channel of these materials, just so it's kind of overwriting any color. So I've actually got the lights turned on as well, so you can see here there's a little bit of light information. So if I turn off the lights, everything comes back, we can see everything. If I turn on the lights, everything that's not lit is disappeared. But these, because I put it in the ambient color channel, it's using its own, it's almost like an emission map, it's using its own colors inside the actual map to give itself a texture. So you can see here how powerful this is, and obviously this is very quick, and you know, I could probably go in there and do a few more passes, maybe try and fix some of this issue in the texture here, maybe even go into Photoshop and say in my cube here, what I would do is I would get something like the smudge brush, make a layer, basically duplicate this layer underneath, got a duplicate layer, And on this top layer, just lock it, and on this bottom layer, what I might do on the smudge brush is literally just kind of drag out the purple a little bit. Just a little bit, and just kind of knocking myself around. And smudge the line, so I'm not smudging the actual top layer, I'm just smudging the layer below it, but I'm dragging whatever colour is apparent at that point. So, let's do it a little bit. And it doesn't have to be much as well, it's only just over the line a little bit. Because as I was saying before, the point of putting those, you know, general colours underneath is to get an approximation of the pixel value or the pixel colour in that area. So if your texture does bleed over like it's doing with our cube inside the rendering scene, what it will see is probably just kind of like a generalised colour, and there's less chance of having any kind of like horrible mess there. So, for instance, I might just knock just a little bit. I mean, there are obviously better ways of doing this. This is just very quick for a demonstration purpose, but basically just smudging the lines a little bit to the outside. Okay, so then I'm just going to save over that and just replace that file there. Where's my cube? I come back into Maya. I'll take that. Now we've kind of more or less got rid of it. There's a few little issues there, but again, it's down to the quality of the initial render and the initial camera quality, and then the quality of the actual rendering. So there's a few different combinations. It's how good does this look, and then the settings for the camera, and then how much information am I putting into this. So yeah, this sort of process is really good if you want to make something in a game, or if you want to make something for a portfolio or anything, which is meant to be really a very specific way, especially if you're doing something on Sketchfab. And Sketchfab, though it's really good with its lighting, it sometimes doesn't have the most in-depth, like we don't get tons of really nice reflections and all this sort of really nice, we're getting there, but not quite fast enough, I think. So with this sort of approach, you can get some really nice cast shadows, you can get some really nice bounce shadows and all that sort of stuff. And all you need is just laid out UVs. Each one of these has got very basic UVs. If I just show you the actual UVs, they're not what I would use as an actual UV. So obviously this is our environment. Show you that again. So this is our environment. This is our cube, this is our sphere. Not the best of unwraps for the purpose, but does a demonstration, it's fine. Cool, so if you've got any questions about that, just send us an email as soon as you can, or whenever you want. I'll happily go back over all the different methods of breaking down information or rendering out information. Once you get your head around it, it's really fun and it's really useful.